President Biden is scheduled to give remarks to Air Force service members stationed in the UK. In just a few minutes, we will bring that to you live when it happens. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of the Interior Department is releasing new details into the D.C. Park Police response to Black Lives Matter protests last June. Video showed officers striking journalists with a baton and shield as they forcefully cleared Lafayette Square minutes before the city's curfew. Soon after, the president and administration officials walked across that square where he posed for pictures with a Bible. Today, the Inspector General's report finds that Park Police did not violate any laws or policies when they cleared that crowd. And joining us now to discuss that report, the Inspector General himself, Mark Greenblatt. Inspector General Greenblatt, thank you for being here today. We appreciate your time. So tell me a little bit about what questions you were trying to answer with this report and what were some of your big findings?
Well, thank you for having me on, Diane. The big question for this report was that this was obviously a particularly tumultuous event in a tumultuous time. And what we sought out to determine is why the U.S. Park Police decided to clear the park on June 1st, and was that influenced by a potential presidential visit to the park or to St. John's Church, which is nearby. The upshot of our review is that we found evidence that the Park Police decided to clear the park to install an anti-scale fencing in order to protect law enforcement officers as well as the park itself and federal and private property. On the flip side, we did not find evidence that a potential presidential visit to the park or the St. John's Church influenced the Park Police's decision-making or their deployment, in their operation to clear out the park. So that's the big finding of our report is the clear evidence of why they decided to do so and when they made the decision. And on the flip side, the lack of evidence related to the president's potential visit influencing that decision.
Now, I know you didn't question Attorney General Barr, the White House, or Secret Service for the report. Given that you were talking about this White House trip and this presidential photo op, why not question those individuals?
So our jurisdiction, as an Inspector General, our jurisdiction is limited to our department. In my case, it's the Department of the Interior. So what our statutory mandate is to look at our components. In this case, it was the United States Park Police and the law enforcement partners that fell under its umbrella. And so that's what we focused on. And we would have pursued evidence had it gone elsewhere. But we found that the U.S. Park Police officials on the ground, they owned the decision, and the corroborating evidence supported that. And so we did not feel the need to engage with some of the other parties that you mentioned, but we did pursue evidence to the extent that it would shine a light on the Park Police officials' decision-making. We did pursue that evidence, and we would do so again if we found such evidence leading elsewhere. So, the key issue is that the Park Police folks, made the call. They owned their decision, and the corroborating evidence that we found, supported that.
And former President Trump was quick to release a statement praising this report, saying, quote, "Thank you to the Department of the Interior Inspector General for completely and totally exonerating me in the clearing of Lafayette Park." He also said, "Our fine Park Police made the decision to clear the park to allow a contractor to safely install anti-scale fencing to protect from Antifa rioters, radical BLM protesters, and other violent demonstrators." Do you agree with his characterization here, and do you think this report totally exonerates the former president in this incident?
Well, that's, I'm going to be honest, that's an uncomfortable position for us, for me as an Inspector General. We are statutorily mandated to be apolitical, nonpartisan, so I don't want to engage on that type of colloquy. Folks are going to characterize our reports in various ways, and I think it's prudent for me not to engage, frankly, because I don't think that leads to good results. We want to maintain our apolitical, nonpartisan posture. And so, if you don't mind, I may take a pass on that question.
Sure. But can you explain a little bit more about why the park was cleared at that exact moment and cleared so quickly?
Sure. That's a great question, Diane. And the reason why is, as far as the evidence that we could tell, the testimony and the corroborating evidence, is that the decision was made to install the fence early in the day, in fact, probably the day before. And what they were waiting for, on the one hand, the fencing materials and the contracting personnel to install the fence, and on the other hand, sufficient law enforcement personnel to clear the park and secure the border for those contractors to do their work. That took effectively over the course of the day for those two elements to combine and to be ripe. For example, we found it at around 5 o'clock, 5:30 is when they had the fencing contractor personnel, all of the fencing material, and all the sufficient law enforcement personnel on hand ready to go. At 5:30, that's the key time. That's when they start deploying. That's when they have their final operational briefing. They start developing the dispersal warnings for the crowd, and they start moving personnel into position in that 5:30 to early 6 o'clock range. That's the key time. And then once all of that was in place, then they started their clearing operation. So that, I hope answers your question, Diane, about why it was that particular timing.
And now some members of Congress have already come out criticizing this report. So I want to give you a chance to respond to some of what they're saying. They say, among other shortcomings, the report fails to explain why federal law enforcement agents use tear gas and weapons against peaceful protesters, why federal law enforcement officials chose not to wait to clear the area and instead cleared it when crowds were at their peak, and why a Bureau of Prisons riot control team was sent to attack protesters despite the fact that they posed no violent threat. Those are exact quotes from those Congress members. What's your response to that?
Well, this was a thorough review looking at a wide variety of different facets with respect to this clearing operation. There are a number of problems with those quotes, I will say. First of all, with respect to the Bureau of Prisons, we did find problems with the Bureau of Prisons operations on that day, and we referred those matters to the Department of Justice Inspector General, who oversees the Bureau of Prisons. So, quite to the contrary, we did have problems there, and we referred it on to the appropriate personnel. With respect to the tear gas, the reference to tear gas, we found that federal personnel, the U.S. Park Police and its personnel in its partner law enforcement entities, did not use what we call CS gas. That the Metropolitan Police Department, the D.C. Police, used used the CS gas on 17th Street, but we did not find evidence that the federal agents used CS gas. In fact, the canisters that were found on site that day, the Park Police didn't even have the appropriate kind of launcher to launch that type of canister. And when you look at the inventory lists of of what equipment they had with them, they did not even have any of those materials associated with what was found. All of that, in contrast, comports with the Metropolitan Police using the CS gas. So there are a couple of core factual problems with some of those quotes, and I think that's a little bit unfortunate, and I'm happy to engage with those folks on the Hill. They are primary stakeholders for us, and make sure that we correct the record with them, because we don't want these misperceptions out there about what we found or our review.
And I understand the report did find poor communication between agencies and ineffective dispersal warnings, quote, may have contributed to confusion and the use of tactics that appeared inconsistent with initial plans. So can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Absolutely. The whole premise of this operation was that it was a joint command between the Secret Service on the one hand and the Park Police on the other. And one of the key problems that we found was that the two of them did not share a radio channel. So that, we think, contributed to the miscommunication. Some of the miscommunication had real impact. For example, the Park Police, the operational plan, the agreed upon plan, had the Park Police issuing 3 dispersal warnings to the crowd, hoping to get the crowd to, as the name suggests, disperse, and then it would make the clearing operation easier. The problem is, before the first dispersal warning was issued, we understand that the Secret Service contingent on the east side of the park actually started their clearing operations before the first warning was issued. Well, that's clearly a communication problem and something that would appear to go in direct contravention of the operational plan that everyone had agreed to. The other issue that we found was after the second warning was provided, a park police contingent with the Arlington County Police, they also left early and started clearing operations before the third warning was issued. So we have a number of instances where there is a clear communication problem amongst the law enforcement personnel, and that was something that we not only made the finding, we make a recommendation for them to fix for the next time so that we don't have these types of problems arise.
Now, there are also a number of lawsuits now pending stemming from this incident. The ACLU is representing Black Lives Matter DC. There are also a few individual protesters suing. And in general, they argue that the use of tear gas, rubber bullets, grenades violated the rights of peaceful protesters. Do you think the findings of this report weaken that argument in any way?
I don't think it touches on those issues. We looked at whether what the decision, when the decision was made, why the decision was made, and looked at the coordination in terms of the operation. We didn't get into the law enforcement tactics that the park police or its partners used to clear the park, which I think would touch on some of the issues, Diane, that you're raising and that the lawsuits are raising. I don't know that there's a lot of overlap between those types of things. What we did opine on that may touch on it is I think we provided additional information with respect to the operational plan, how that was formulated, and the briefing that went out to all the law enforcement officers about the operational plan. So those elements may touch on it, but we do not want to be in a position of picking and choosing good policy, good choices, bad choices with respect to law enforcement tactics. That's not a good position for us to be in, and we would generally shy away from that type of analysis. So no, I don't know that there's a lot of overlap there with those lawsuits, and I think the courts will have to, sort that out.
All right, Inspector General Mark Greenblatt, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.